Coming up on this month's rerun selection, I pulled up Dune Part 1 from January of 22. One of the main themes of this movie is fear as a motivator. What do you do when fear attacks and threatens to take over? How will you defeat it? You've got to train and prepare even if you don't feel like doing it, because it's in those moments of preparation that victory will be assured.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being.
Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me back in the saddle again is Britt Mooney. How you doing,
What's
man?
up, everybody?
No horses.
Back in the
No horses were injured in the making of this podcast. So we are here to talk about Dune, not the 84 Sting in metal underwear weirdness.
Oh, wait, that's what I was watching. That's what
we're gonna
I watched the 80s
This will be
one.
an interesting conversation, then. Now, I remember reading this book. Nerd alert. I reread the book again just in the last couple weeks to get a grasp for, I remember really enjoying the book. So it was interesting because, as you pointed out, Britt, you reminded me, this book was written in 1964 or 65. It was back in the 60s. It's been a while. Almost 40 years old. And some of the stuff that I've saw about it, they said that this story really set the stage for a lot of stories to come, especially this idea of the chosen one. So now I'll kick it over to you and let you.
Yeah, I mean, The Lord of the Rings had some of that too. Wasn't completely original for that, and obviously it's not original for the scripture, right? And in the Western,
it's like we say, right? Every story echoes the truth of the Bible. So what? There's somebody that was thousands of years in the making and come along to break space and time and bring freedom and greenery for his people.
Yeah.
Water to a desert.
Yeah. I read the book, I want to say late 90s. I was older when I read the book. It wasn't like when I was a kid, and loved it. And then I got into the next two. Was it Dune Messiah and Children of Dune or something? Yeah. And those were, if you think the first book was slow, like the next two books were like way, like they're just all conversations. They're like nothing happens. They're just all just talking. But of course I read through them and loved them for their own unique thing that they are, unique stories that they are. And really, there's nothing like Dune. Like, you can't compare this to Star Trek or Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. Like, it is its own unique sort of story. And I've always loved it. And I loved the movie, the 80s movie. I loved the movie.
Except for the Baron. He grossed me out. I did not like him at all.
I think he was supposed to gross us out, right?
I know, but still super big and pustully and stuff.
Yeah, it was nasty. And Sting was in it, and so that makes it cool, right? This Sci-Fi Network did a miniseries, and it wasn't that good.
Yeah.
And they needed more money. And so finally, I think what everybody's excited about is they finally got a chance to do it with more modern technology and special effects and all of that sort of stuff. And it really was visually stunning.
Wow.
And I really loved it. I loved it. I told Paul before we started that I give it about a B+. I think it's almost impossible to make a movie out of the book just because of it's so philosophical, so in your head. Like, there's so much conversation and thought process sort of stuff.
Right, because even in the book, that's popping around from different people's perspective. There's no, a lot of stories are from a single person's point of view. You might hear their thoughts, but this is like within the same chapter. You're suddenly from Jessica's mind to Paul's mind. You're just like, what's going on here? Wait, whose eyeballs am I seeing the world through here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because this was a 2.5 hour movie. And it's interesting. The book is actually set up in 3 sections because you talk about probably, I can't remember the name of the first one, probably Dune, and then Maudib, and then Prophecy or something like that. But there's 3 big sections. And really, this just only got up through the first one. Probably not even all the way through that one, just because. And I told my wife, I said, I liked it-ish. It's hard watching a movie when you're in the middle of reading it because you're constantly comparing what it was to the book, to the story. And you're like, it is sort of the same story, but not. But even at 2.5 hours, I felt like they rushed through the character development and the world building. I was like, wait, there's people that we haven't even been introduced yet. And
Oh, I know.
it felt rushed. It was like, oh, I wanted to spend more time with Gurney and Duncan, Idaho. By the way, what a great name for basically the good guy, the strong guy, the weapons master or whatever, Duncan, Idaho. Not much more gritty than that.
And great casting. And I love the casting. And overall, I thought they did a good job. But, there's just a couple things here and there that I wish they would have done differently. But I watched it at home, and I'm really thinking like I might need to go see this in a theater somewhere, just because visually it was so stunning.
I do have surround sound, so I could crank it up. Like I feel vibrations when we're listening. Going Beach Boys.
Yeah.
And I think our biggest point of contention is in the book, the mom, Jessica. She's a badass. She is a, Bean Gesserit witch.
Yeah,
she has powers of, she can read people. She can manipulate people. She can fight. In the movie, portrayed a little bit of that, but really she did a lot of weeping, which especially in a book in Dune, how important water is. She wasted a lot of water.
Well, and they were trying to show that she was very conflicted and concerned about her son, who was, it's a pretty major thing that he's going through, and she understands that.
He's either the one or he's going to die.
Either, yeah. So that's, for a mom, that's a pretty big thing, right? And for dad too. But the dad didn't really understand it. Duke Leto or whatever his name is. Yeah. But Jessica did understand it. So they were trying to show some of that, but I think they could have done it and still made her seem a little stronger and a little more kind of put together. Because if she had been doing this for a long time, she just kind of would fall apart. And you're like, what? Like that seemed different enough from the character of the book that I was, she was such a strong character. And when you really think about it, for something that was written in 1965, it wasn't like there was no feminine rights or anything like that. But 1965, for there to be this really strong character that she was, and then Chani as well. You had these two really strong female characters.
That's who I remember in adolescence loving the character of Chani.
Yeah.
It's I want to find my Chani.
Yeah. But not she's just beautiful and someone waiting to be saved. She teaches him and she does all this
capable.
Cool stuff. Yeah.
She knows what she's doing. Yeah. And she, like you said, she teaches him the ways of the desert and how to survive. But there's this bond between them that grows, but it's not this, she's not a princess, right? She's a warrior.
And that's not innuendo either, teaching him the ways of the desert. That's literal. That's what she actually does.
And there was a scene where she was selecting the housekeeper, and the housekeeper, Mapes, was bringing a knife, but Jessica's like, I can tell that you have a weapon, but I can tell you whatever that weapon is, it's not going to be enough. It was like, oh yeah, there she is.
She is. That's right.
2 scenes later, she's crying. So there's a few clips, and like you said, with the movie and a book and a story this epic, it's really hard to grasp it. And even with a movie this visually stunning, it was hard to find some, little clips of dialogue. There was a scene, Paul in the book, he's a 15-year-old boy, raised to be a duke. Really, and Jessica, like I mentioned earlier, is a Bene Gesserit witch, which means that she's been trained in all these ways. But when you start looking at it, the Bene Gesserit is a really shady, they're bad guys, really. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, you've been controlling and manipulating the universe to create your outcome. And I was like, wow, that sounds shady. It's like, oh, who made you? They're the Illuminati.
Yeah.
Right. These shadow people who everybody's afraid of because they can fight and all this stuff. So so Paul's being prepared. There's a lot of fear in the book, especially. And we see it in the scene in the movie where that little assassin drone comes out, because this fear of assassination, of being poisoned, of treachery, like that's like before they'd eat food, they'd have this poison seeker drone check to make sure there's no poison in it. They'd make sure, like I said, there was a lot of fear and protection, to the point where when they're in the desert and somebody gives Jessica a cup of coffee, she's like, this is weird that I'm just taking it and accepting it from this person. Like how we do every day in the restaurants.
Right.
But that level of fear is really in just the political machinations, the manipulations. I don't know, Britt, what clip do you want to start with?
I don't know. Let's do the dreams make good stories. And I think that that's kind of early on. And I think that that's a big part of what's going on in the story. At that point, it's kind of a little vision of what's to come. And so I think that one would, yeah. Well, I think it would be a good one to start with.
And I think this is maybe the reason that I struggled with this movie a little bit more, is because Timothée Chalamet does a great job as Paul. But when I read the book, very similar to Jessica, I had him very much more being a very badass character. And then we get to the movie and he's very emo, conflicted, maybe how it was intended. And I just was really happy there was a character with my name that wasn't a complete nerd. So in this scene, he's sharing with Duncan, the aforementioned Duncan, Idaho, played by Jason Momoa. Great cast, as you mentioned already. And he's telling him, he's like, I need to go to Arrakis, the desert planet. I need to go there with you because he's had these dreams, and these dreams say, you get there, you find the Freemen, which are the nomads, the gypsies, the desert people. And I've seen you die. And I feel like if I'm there, then you won't die. And Duncan responds to that fear.
Listen, dreams make good stories, but everything important happens when we're awake, because that's when we make things happen. Look at you. Put on some muscle?
I did?
No.
He's a scrawny dude, but, and that's the thing, right? Dreams make good stories, but life happens when you're awake.
The important things happen when you're awake. That's reality. And the reason I like that, and I wrote it down on my notes, the reason why I like that is, it's not that dreams aren't important. Dreams can influence us, and dreams can guide us. And whether you mean that as a dream, like I want to be a rock star one day or something, whatever kind of dreams we're talking about, in the scripture, God spoke to people through dreams. And I believe we can be spoken to through dreams. I know I have had dreams that I knew were from God and were spiritually important. And it doesn't happen all the time, but it's happened enough that it's a reality, because God's not asleep when I'm asleep. or you. Like, he's not asleep when we're asleep. So he finds ways to talk to us then too and hang out with us.
Yeah.
So anyway, so dreams are important. However, like we shouldn't elevate dreams to reality in the sense of like they can guide us and they can give us clues or whatever they're meant to do at times. But the important things happen when we are awake, and we can't be so distracted by the dreams. And that's why I like that sort of lesson that he's trying to give Paul at that point, is that we can't be so distracted by the dreams that we forget to be in the moment and be present where we are. And I think a lot of people do have problems with that sometimes we're so distracted by our phones, or we're distracted by what's going on with sports, or we're distracted by, stuff going on with whatever, or even crises at times. Like sometimes we forget to just be in the moment, that we can't change what's in the past, and we're not in the future yet, but we can actually have an impact. The only place we can have an impact is right here. That's really the only place we can have an impact for the future. One of my favorite quotes is from the last episode of The Office, which is, the last 2 seasons of The Office weren't that great. But the last episode of The Office was amazing. One of the best final episodes of any series ever. And Andy, they're kind of hanging out in the office again, and they're getting the crew back together. And Andy says, when I was here, I was always waiting to get somewhere else. He said, but now that I'm in these other places, I wish I was back here in the office. And he says, I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days when you're in them. Mm. And it's kind of, some people might find it cheesy, but I find it very insightful. Like be in the moment. Realize my kids are only going to be 16, 14, and 12 for a certain amount of time. That this season isn't going to last forever. I have to enjoy it. I have to be in the moment, and I have to invest in this season the way that I should.
And the other aspect of that is the dreams and the visions that we have, they only come true because of what we do or don't do in real life. Like he had these dreams that Duncan died, and we will find out later in the movie that he dies a completely different way. But this idea that, you can have dreams and they're important, they're good, but what we live is more important. And we can get so wrapped up in these plans and these projects and these ideas that we sort of lose track of the day to day. I loved what you said about the kids, because I so many times, and it's easy as a parent, right? I just want, once they can hold their own bottle, then that'll be so good. Once they can pee in the toilet and I don't have to change, no more diapers, right? And then what you do, not that I miss diapers, but there's a part of me, my kids are all, my youngest is now 15. And I was like, what? And my daughter's 20. And I think what I wouldn't give to hold my 5-year-old daughter's hand as we go to school, or like one more day with little Lainey. Not that I don't enjoy spending time with her now, but there's a relationship there that has shifted and changed. And as you mentioned, we miss the good old days that'll never come back because of the things. And not that it's bad, but we still have to grieve it.
We do. Absolutely.
And I think it was interesting. Like it was a sudden shift, that joke about him putting on muscle.
Right.
Because here he is like, oh, you find the Freeman, you join, you die. But if I'm there, it would change. He's like, oh, you're putting on muscle? You think? No. It's almost like saying, you think you'd make a bigger difference in a knife fight? It's not really a firefight there. If you want to actually help, stop dreaming and start training.
Yeah, good. Sometimes we think, oh, well, I have this dream and it's just going to happen one day. And it's like, well, what are you doing to train for that? Like, what are you training for that? Like I've been having conversations with people who have children older than me, like children in college and, who are in their 20s or whatever. And I'm like, what can I do now so that we can establish some traditions so that when they're in college, they come back and want to come back, so that we can have dinners together and, and do a game night or something. Like, what are some traditions that I could start? And, and some of them are like, man, we wish we would have done that. That's smart to think about it. Like, well, how am I disciplining myself now for the dreams that God has given me? Because you have to be ready. You have to, if you think God has chosen you to do something, then discipline yourself. Like, don't just spend time on your phone or just watching Dune again, like I want to do. But you're going to have to make choices and sacrifices to discipline yourself, so that when those opportunities come, you're ready. And so it's happened to me so many times where the work I put in, there's an opportunity later, and I can speak intelligently, or I can kind of do what I'm supposed to do in that moment. And there have been other times I'm like, something happens and I'm like, man, I wish I would have worked on that more, or whatever, that happens too. So, but I love that. That's really good.
We're not always in the mood to train. Right? It's like, I'm tired. I've got this going on. And because life comes at you fast, to quote another movie.
Yeah, there you go. I was waiting for you to finish it.
We have to stop and smell the roses sometimes. And so we see this in the movie where Paul is training. The other guy shows up, Gurney, played by Thanos.
Right.
And he shows up and he's like, Gurney, I'm not really in the mood. And the guy's like, I don't. You need to prepare. You need to train. You need to be ready.
Guess I'm not in the mood today.
Mood? Yeah. What's mood to do with it? You fight when the necessity arises, no matter the mood. Now fight! Come on!
I have you.
Aye. But look down, my lord. You'd have joined me in death. I see you found the mood.
Will it be that bad?
You don't get it, do you? You don't really understand the grave nature of what's happening to us. For 80 years, Arrakis belonged to House Harkonnen. 80 years of owning the spice fields. Can you imagine the wealth? In your eyes, I need to see it in your eyes. You never met Harkonnens before. I have. They're not human, they're brutal. You have to be ready.
The way he said that at the end is almost the way I think Jesus sounded. He's like, in this world, you will have trouble. I need you to see that. I need you to be ready. And how do we get ready?
We gotta train. We gotta put on the armor. We have to train in the armor. We can't just say, well, the armor is over there in the corner when I need it. Like, no, you have to live in the armor. The Bible says at one point, like, you're a soldier. You don't get to live like a civilian.
Yeah.
Like you're a soldier. Like, you have to live ready. And and my mentor used to say, because people would ask him, like if he was going to go speak somewhere, they say, are you ready to speak on Sunday? Are you ready to speak on Saturday or whenever at the event? He goes, if I have to get ready, what am I now? He believed, my mentor, and he taught me, like, you're always ready to give an account for the hope that is within you. You are always ready. And the devil doesn't care whether you're ready or not. In fact, he'd prefer that you're not. And that's kind of what comes across in that clip. And I love that, where he's not being mean by forcing him to train when he's not in the mood. Like, champions train when they're not in the mood. There's no champion that just trained when they felt like it, or just ran or did whatever they did when it didn't hurt or whatever. Like, no, they played through stuff. The enemy who wants to steal, kill, and destroy, who is, what does he say? Brutal? What is it? What is the
brutal?
He's like, man, your enemies, the ones who are out to kill you, like they are really out for you. Like they are, with everything in their being, they're out to get you. And it doesn't matter whether you're in the mood or not. And it's love to train that way. It's love to tell people like, look, you got to be ready. You got to be on guard. You have to understand that you have an enemy at all times, because the devil's not taking a break.
Right.
The world isn't taking a break. The flesh, I mean, our enemies isn't taking a break. And I get it. It's exhausting to be on guard like that. It's exhausting to think like that. But that's why I love that scene, is because, we haven't been invited on a cruise ship. We've been recruited on a battleship, and it shouldn't surprise us when we're asked to swab the decks. It shouldn't surprise us. Like we didn't come to the game to sit in the stands, and a lot of people I think are surprised when they show up thinking we're just going to sit and watch the game, and they're given a jock strap and a helmet, and they're like, what the heck? What, what?
And hopefully pants. And I want to hit on this a little bit. It's like, ready for what? What's going to happen?
Right.
It's like,
good.
We think of the big things, right? We think of, oh, my dad got sick, or, oh, my daughter got pregnant, or my son died in a car crash or something. We think of these big things as the attacks. But we were talking before. I work with this group to do men's retreats. And this was our first men's retreat in 2 years because of COVID. And it's about sort of offering freedom. And we did a podcast earlier with Dan Horner where we talked about the Matrix. And he's the guy that I've been doing this with for the last 8 years now. So I get home Sunday and I am wiped out. Like, it's late nights, but it's as you mentioned, as you know, Britt, you're sort of pouring yourself into these guys, and you get back and you're like, I need to recharge. Well, Monday was my wife's birthday, and last year was her 50th birthday. And it also came over the same weekend. We did a very small group of people that I was away at the camp for. But I had cards, like the kids would give her a card each day I was gone. I came back right as I left the retreat early and came back to surprise her for her birthday. Had a surprise party, had 50 bundt cakes, little buntlet cakes available for her. Yeah, we were put on some pounds that week. I mean, I nailed it.
Yeah, you did.
This year, I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't even get you a card. I got you these presents. The kids came over, and I'm wiped out. I was asleep by 9 on Sunday. And even Monday, it was that feeling like she's disappointed in me. I've screwed up. And it was funny you mentioned swabbing the decks, because we're getting some work done in our kitchen. And I'm doing some of it. I'm putting down the vinyl planks, and they come in and put the countertop and the sink in, but if you want the faucet attached, you're going to have to do that yourself. You've got to reattach the garbage disposal and all this. So we get all that done, and I test the dishwasher, because again, we haven't had a dishwasher in our house for over a month. So I run the dishwasher, no leaks. Yes.
Nice.
So I load it up. I go run over to Lowe's. And so when I got back home, I come into the kitchen. There's water all over the floor. There's water under the sink. And I'm like, what happened? It's like, I've gone to Lowe's twice. Now I've got to go back and do something to fix whatever this is now. And that feeling of being overwhelmed, of too much to do. And I don't know how to do half the stuff I'm trying to do. It's a miracle that I haven't shocked myself yet. But that's where those attacks come from. It's much more those subtle. Even this morning, I have been running for the last several months, but I was tired. I had felt like another migraine coming on, like my body hurt. And so I didn't run because I wasn't in the mood. It's like, oh, maybe I should read a little bit of the Bible. Maybe I should listen to a little bit of a worship music. Maybe I should spend 5 minutes drinking coffee and praying instead of just jumping up, checking my email, and getting to work. Because we do have to train. And then Paul says like a soldier. He also says like an athlete.
Good.
So that we can run our race. We talk about running races a lot up here. We want to be prepared. And I want to hit back to the verse you pulled out. Be prepared to give reason for the hope that you have. And the key piece of that, other than be prepared, is to have hope.
There you go. Right?
I mean, if you don't have hope, you have nothing to be prepared for. Like, hey, why are you so bummed out and miserable all the time?
Right.
It's like, yeah, nobody's going to ask you that one.
Well, they might. And you're always prepared for that. Why are you so down? Oh man,
so busy.
I'm so busy. I'm so oh my God. And we're always ready to complain. We don't have to get ready to complain.
We're always ready to give a reason for the grouchiness that we have within us.
But here's the thing. If someone is going to ask about the hope, that means they have to see you have hope. Right. That means they have to recognize that you are someone with hope. And they're only going to see that if you're living by hope. And so I don't know if you've ever been kind of not blindsided, but surprised when someone suddenly gives you an opportunity to talk about Jesus. Like it actually does happen. Like you don't have to force some conversations. Like some conversations just naturally happen. And I think sometimes because we feel unprepared and we're not ready for whatever reason, like it gets kind of awkward. Like we kind of, and later on we're like, man, I really should have used that as an opportunity to talk about Jesus and talk about hope and talk about what I believe, even if it's not like a evangelistic sort of thing, like you're able to say, the reason why I can do this is the only reason I can get through this is because I have a relationship with God and I know he loves me and I know he wants good things for me, as hard as this is or whatever. Like, you have to give reason. And that's the kind of thing that when people see that, people would rather see a sermon than hear one. And
it's much more effective preaching too.
It's much more effective. And because if they see it and they ask questions, it's going to give what you say weight, but you have to be ready. You have to think about it. And you have to be close enough with the Spirit, with God, where you're listening. And like I said, what was it, a few episodes ago, the discipline of relationship. You have to have the discipline. That's the main discipline. Like if you want the discipline that you need, it's the discipline of listening. Like, okay, God, what's going on? Just always be listening and walking with him. Like that's the redemption. That's part of the redemption, going back to walking with him in the cool of the evening, like in the garden. Like Adam wasn't supposed to do all the stuff in the garden alone. He was doing it with God. God was with him while he was doing it. And it was after he took the fruit that God shows up. Like they weren't together, right? And so there's a discipline of like leaning on him, leaning on my beloved, like a song of Solomon, who's that coming out of the wilderness, leaning on his beloved or whatever. And
applying that to what I was experiencing.
Yeah.
I was laying my own interpretation. Oh, my wife's disappointed in me because I didn't do all this. Well, I had a lot of other stuff going on, but even like helping bring my daughter in, and she brought some presents, and we'd actually gotten, like, her best presents came from other people, but I helped pick them out. And the idea of the faucet running, the leak, I still don't know why it leaked. I don't know what happened. But instead of taking it and interpreting it as, I obviously don't know what I'm doing, I'm spending all this time and money and really just going to make the house worse, I give my own interpretation. But you have to listen and say, God, what is it you're trying to teach me? What is it I need to learn? Even this morning, yeah, I didn't run, And I could easily beat myself up and say, well, it didn't matter if I was in the mood. I should have gone running. I should have done this. God might have said, you were feeling bad because I wanted you to take it easy. You don't need to run. Your body needs to recover. You need to recover. It could be, you need to show a little more discipline, but it's not my interpretation. It's his.
That's right.
God, what do you want me to do with this? Am I supposed to, what do you want me to do? And what do you want me to do tomorrow? When stuff happens, our first response should be, God, what do you have to say? Yeah. What's your interpretation of what just happened?
Yeah, it's not even an interpretation. It's the truth. He's not interpreting what's happening. He's just telling you what is happening.
Well, his interpretation is much better than mine.
But when Jesus talked about the gift of the Holy Spirit in John, the latter part of John, he says, and he will lead you into all truth. Not some truth, not just religious truth, not mathematical truth, not just like all of it. Like he's in all truth, and he will lead you. And this is why you need him, is because he will lead you in all truth. And just a practical thing that my mentor again taught me, when he would get frustrated with something, he'd stop and he'd go, "This is a test." He would just stop where he was, and he'd sit back. And he, because he's getting frustrated, he's getting angry, and something's not working, and then he'll stop and he'll go, "This is a test, Father, help me. What's going on?" And it's what a great discipline, because things are going to piss us off. Things are going to happen where there's water all over the floor, and what you thought had been fixed, and right. And we can't help our first emotional reaction. Like there's not a sin for me to get pissed off right away. Right. But just like we see later on in the movie, if I don't control those impulses, that's going to hurt other people. Like then I'm just going to carry on whatever the devil wants to do in my life. I'm going to multiply it. Humans are by their very nature multipliers. Like our whole bodies are meant to multiply ourselves. And through relationship, that's through, becoming one with another person is how we multiply. And so whatever we allow in, we're going to multiply it, whether that's chaos, whether that's anger, so all that to say is I can't help my first reaction of anger or lust or temptation or whatever. I can't help that, but I can learn to stop, be still, and know and say, okay, God, what are you doing? What's going on? This is a test. I know I have an enemy. What's going on? And he is so faithful. He is so faithful to talk to us and let us know what's going on and guide us through those moments.
I love what you were referencing, and you were heading us up right to the next clip I wanted to talk about. And it's one of those key moments, both in the book and in the movies, where Paul, he's going to face the Reverend Mother. I'd mentioned the Bene Gesserit, the Illuminati. She's the head Illuminati. She can tell you can't tell her a lie. She knows if you're lying to her or not. And because his mother has been training Paul in their ways, in their weirding ways. So he has powers from her. He has authority from him, from his father, Duke Leto. So this sort of culmination into this initiation where he stands before the Reverend Mother and she says, okay, well, it's time. His order is to put his hand in a box. It's like, oh, that's weird. It's a box. And as
he's
soon
told
as
it's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt. What's this involve? Pain. Okay, weird. But as soon as he puts the hand in the box, she puts a needle at his neck. And this is the Gom Jabbar. And she says, if you take your hand out of the box, I will plunge this needle into your neck and you will die instantaneously. No big whoop.
Thanks.
And in the book, and again, nerd, the book really describes what he felt like his hand had burned off.
Right.
To the point where when he took it out at the end, obviously, spoiler, he doesn't die. That's not what we're focusing on. The focus is this balance of pain and fear and what we do with it. Because during this scene, Paul's got his hand in the box. What's in the box? I don't know we'll ever do 7 here.
No, probably not.
But his mother's outside doing her weepy thing, but she's going over the Bean Gesserit codes about fear and how to defeat fear. And it's about bringing your mind, your body under the authority and control of your mind. And so that's what's going on during this clip, because it's, and visually, as we mentioned a million times on this already, visually, it's a really good scene. It doesn't quite carry over as much on audio, but I think it's still going to work.
The test is simple. Remove your hand from the box, and you die.
What's in the box?
Pain. No need to call the guards. Your mother stands behind that door. No one will get past her.
Why are you doing this?
An animal caught in a trap will gnaw off its own leg to escape. What will you do?
Oh.
Silence.
Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings obliteration. And I'll face my fear and I'll permit it to pass over me and through me. And when death comes, oh, don't be in your eyes, whose path. And where the fear is gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain.
Enough.
So here is what Jessica was saying. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings obliteration. And I'll face my fear, and I'll permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye and see its path. And where the fear is gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain.
So good.
Yeah, I think we're going to probably spend the rest of our time talking about this. Because this idea that fear, I mean, it's true. It's scientifically true that when fear and anxiety increase, your brain ceases functioning.
That's right.
Kills your mind.
Yep.
Basically, the rest of the movie, I think, basically is this section walked out. There's a scene late in the movie where they take an ornithopter, which is a cool little dragonfly looking helicopter thing, and it flies and it's in a sandstorm. And the only way to survive the sandstorm is to let go of the controls and let the wind carry it as opposed to fighting it. And I had a friend of mine who used to tell me that. He's like, you just need to get out of your own way. Like, let the spirit move through you and stop fighting for control. And that's what happens is we fight for control when, whether it's water on the floor or something a little more dramatic and important. We say, this doesn't look like how I want it to look. And we try to take it back because we're afraid of that it's not going to be that it's going to bring pain, right? And Alan Arnold, friend of the pod, he talks a lot about this contrast between love and fear. And this was really eye-opening for me earlier in February, because I realized how much of what I was doing was based out of fear. But he says every choice we make is based on love or fear. Fear-based reactions look like control, offense, rage, and scarcity. None of that going on in the world today.
Right.
Love-based reactions reflect patience, kindness, true strength, and abundance. Love or fear, those are the only two choices. Which do you reflect?
Love it. Well, the Bible says God has not given us a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. And you're totally right. That was 2,000 years ago that was written. And it shows that contrast. Like fear is on the other side of love. It's not hate, it's fear. Because fear shuts you down, but it shuts you down in a different way. You make different decisions, and you make decisions trying to accomplish a security that is elusive and won't work because it's based out of fear. Fear does the same thing that faith does. Faith leads to its own fulfillment. Faith, actually, you will get what you believe in faith, right? The faith that God gives you. I'm not talking about just any faith. Well, I believe when,
just got to have faith.
Yeah. It's not a name it, claim it thing. It's faith is seeing the unseen, and then you follow that, and it's realized because you have a revelation that goes beyond what you physically see. Fear is based on the unseen too. Fear is based on, it could be something that you physically see in front of you, but then you're afraid of what's going to happen, right? I mean, fear is, and you could be healthy, right? I mean, like some dude's about to, you might need to run. But fear is also based on what is unseen. And I've seen it happen so many times. And I've tried to help a couple people, and it's really difficult because they don't understand it. It's like you get what you're afraid of, because when you act out of fear, you actually get whatever you were afraid of.
Because you're focusing on it.
Because you're focusing on it. So the woman who doesn't want to be abandoned, because she has a fear of abandonment, she starts living according to this fear of abandonment. People have, and probably because people have legitimately abandoned her.
Right.
Right. So she tries to live out of this. She lives out of this fear of abandonment. So what does she do? She tries to control things. So it's just control. But see, people don't like to be controlled. So what do? They leave. But now her fear of abandonment has just become realized.
So she works even harder at it. She works
even harder to try to
makes it
hold
worse.
on to people. She tries to manipulate people. She tries to bully people. She tries to do anything she can so that people won't leave her. But that just makes them want to leave her even more. Unless you're Jesus and he sees the difference and he knows what's really going on. Or unless you're the church and you love her and you try to say, look, what all the stuff that's behind this is fear. And God wants it to be done out of love. God wants to switch this out. And I love that. And I love the fact that it was, can you endure pain? And it's going back to, man, if you're going to be chosen for something, like the question isn't, are you ready to be happy? Are you ready to have a good time? Right? If you're going to be
chosen ones in these stories are never have a pleasant journey.
Yeah, look, I'm sorry. No prophet was ever given a glossy, gold trimmed road into being a prophet. Like there was pain and tragedy. And I'm not saying it's always going to happen that way, but it's not a fun road all the time. Like having a coal that even the angel wouldn't touch. The angel had to use tongs, and having that put to your mouth. Like, this does not sound like a fun experience for Isaiah. However, his revelation of who the Son of God was the biggest revelation of the Messiah that had ever happened yet. Yeah. Like, he had a revelation no one had ever got. But what did it take to get there? He had he had to be able to say, look, I know this hurts, but I'm going to stick it out, because reality, even though it feels like my life is ending, like it feels like my hand is burning off, that's not reality. That's not reality. And if I act, I think I'm dying, but if I act according to what
if I try to save my hand, I'll lose my life.
Exactly. Good. That's where I was trying to go. Yeah, exactly. If I try to save my life, I'll lose it. But if I lose my life it's not just for anything, for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of Jesus and the sake of the good news, then that is where you will find it. And that's what ends up happening to Paul in the movie, is he has to make hard decisions, and he has to do really things that go kind of against his morality and to a certain level. I'm not suggesting people go against their morality necessarily. I'm just saying, like, he had to do something he really didn't want to do, but that's what had to happen for him to kind of ascend to that next stage of his, becoming of who he was supposed to be, with that fight towards the end. It was so well done. That I really did like that scene, and the kind of the end sort of scene that they had there, that progression that they had at the end of the story. So anyway, I really liked that scene.
I love the last line of that, where she says, "Only I will remain."
Mm-hmm.
That's the message of the scriptures. When James talks about, consider it joy when you suffer various trials. Because what it is, it's not talking about, yay, more pain, or, it's not some sort of sadistic approach to life.
Right.
But it's knowing that God loves you. Because if our response is based on love and confidence that God loves us, then the heat, the fire, isn't going to kill us, but it's going to burn away everything that's not really us. It's just like when you're melting gold. You heat it up until it melts, but whatever is the impurities in the gold, they're not melted, so they get scooped out, and you have a pure sample. You have the gold is higher quality. And that's what happens when we go through the fire, when we go through the testing.
Recently, I've lost 75 pounds. I wasn't necessarily out of shape because I was exercising, but I had to figure out, like, why was I gaining weight, and some medical issues, and like, I kind of figured it out. But I didn't lose 75 pounds because it was easy. Like, even though I figured one of the issues out, there were moments when I was hungry because I was limiting my food intake. I mean, I wasn't starving myself, but it was definitely, I'm only having one piece of pizza, which is fine. And it satisfies me because I'm an old man and I'm not 16 anymore. And I can't eat like that anymore. But, your body's like, wait a minute, why are you denying me? Your body hates it when you deny it things. Your body hates it when you deny it things that it wants.
The flesh wants to be the boss.
It wants to be the boss. And you say, no, I'm the boss. And you don't rule over me, because then I become a slave. Whatever you allow to rule over you, you become a slave of that thing. Whether it was, choosing what to eat and being disciplined about that, and or whether it was the exercise and doing it over, it took 6 months for me to lose 75 pounds, or at one point 80 pounds. I've kind of gained a little bit back. But the point is that I feel 10 times, 100 times better. I feel more like myself. I feel better. I can breathe easier. I sleep better. So what I had to tell myself is, you're right. I'm not being a sadist to tell myself no. I was telling myself no because there was something better on the other side of this. And it's the same way when you're the athlete or you're the soldier. There's a great movie called Renaissance Man. We may need to do that at some point, but
I'm not sure. Great movie would.
Have you seen it with Danny DeVito?
Yes, I know.
And the whole thing? Oh, I love that movie.
It's been a while.
Maybe it's not a great movie, but I like it. But there's this one part where they're coming out of the army base, and there's a sign in the army base, and it says the battle is won here. The battle was won on the army base. So what does that mean? Like the battle, like one day you might be in battle, but where is that going to be won? And Band of Brothers, I hope we get to do some Band of Brothers at some point.
Oh yeah.
But like in Band of Brothers, they end up saying, that original group of the 101st that went through Currahee, and as much as they hated, I forget his name, Lieutenant, whatever, the Ross, the Ross character, as much as they hated him, they trained for a year before they went to France in D-Day, and their replacements only trained for a few weeks. And like in comparison, and they said, as much as we hated him, the ones that survived, we would not have survived without his training. As much as we hated him and he made us throw up, and he was sadistic. We thought he was awful, but like looking back, he saved our lives. And that's the kind of thing we're talking about. You have to see, and God gives us that. God gives us the faith and the revelation to say, the pain you're of now isn't the end of the story. I'm doing this for a reason. I'm doing this for good. Like there's a good reason that, and even things that we don't think aren't good. Somebody getting sick, or there's an accident and an untimely death. There's a promise that for those who love God and are called according to his purpose and walk with him, all things will work out for good. And that's an amazing promise that I know I have had to stand on and cling to when I don't understand why the heck some things are going on, right? And I just love that. But anyway, it's a great scene, and I really liked it.
So the question that we have to answer ourselves as we wrap this up is, when we're going through those times of trial, of pain, are we going to listen to the voice of fear or the voice of love? And because it doesn't come natural, right? It's like, no, I want that second piece of pizza. No, I want to be pissed off about the water on the floor. We've got to train ourselves. And that could just be, hey, what is a verse like Jessica did? What is a mantra?
Yeah.
I can say, what do I need to hold on to?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of peace, be still. Because when I go to bed at night, I'll try to say peace when I inhale and be still on the exhale. One, because Jesus said it, so it's got some weight behind it. But that's my command over my heart.
Yeah.
So it's how can we train? How can we defeat fear? And we know perfect love casts out fear. And the source of perfect love is God. And we've got
Amen.
God in us.
I'm glad you brought that out too, because that's something that I remember thinking when I was watching the movie. Like, she was saying it like it was a scripture, like it was a mantra, like it was like, and that it was something that she had taught him.
Right.
Even though he wasn't saying it, like she was like, it was almost like a prayer, like, remember this. Like, I know you're going through this. Remember what I taught you. It's like she didn't just.
And that's how it was
power.
Shot as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what she was saying, he was thinking.
Yeah.
And in the book, it does that. You can tell that he's doing these mantras in these moments of, oh no, I've got to get control of my heart rate.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
So we look forward. They haven't even started shooting part 2.
Really?
I don't know. You just said they just now greenlit it.
No, that's true. They just greenlit it. So you're right.
So I guess they haven't.
Shooting.
And they haven't cast the other bad guy, the Paul protagonist, Fade Ruatha.
I love that you know all the names. I mean, I know you just read it, but I think it's so cool that you know all the names.
So we enjoyed Dune. It's got at least a B+. We're both going to watch it again. We love our HBO Max. So this has been Paul McDonald and Britt Mooney talking about love and fear and making through the fire of pain. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you join us next time here on the Minute the Movies podcast.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?